Yo, hello, and welcome to the Pixelists, everybody. I'm Will. That's Blake. We're here to talk about all things nerdy, specifically Critical Role today. And bro, it's good to see you, man.
You too, man.
It's been so long since we've done this. I feel like it's like the longest it's been since we started.
Yeah, which great to see you too. I can't help but get so hyped to talk Critical Role, talk D&D, and welcome all of you, by the way, who are here to talk about it with us. Hope you're just as excited as we are. And yes, my friend, it has been a while. We did just put out a video yesterday, but like in terms of like, our weekly setup, those of you guys who may have been waiting for this video to go up, I know it's Monday. We had, I think, a Monday or a Tuesday episode a while back, maybe early on in this campaign, but or maybe it was EXU, I can't remember. But yeah, I was really sick from the holidays, and then you went on a little weekend trip. So this was like the first time we could actually sit down and record. I was like coughing up a lung, so I was like doing a microphone-based production was really not in my best interest, I guess.
Yeah, we decided to put it off a little bit, but we're here now, and I'm excited to talk about this. I can't wait to dive in, and I want to go ahead and start, but I want to make sure, is there anything else we need to like, since it has been a minute, that we need to like cover before we jump in?
Yeah. So just a couple of quick like housekeeping things. First of all, if you've never watched this channel before, we're the Pixelists. We are just two buddies who we love nerdy stuff. So like we love D&D, we love Marvel. That's pretty much all of our channel's content. We like to say there's a lot of other stuff that we like to watch and enjoy, and we're continuing to expand our tastes.
Yeah.
So if you've made it here, welcome. I hope this is a bastion for you to also be able to talk the nerdy stuff that you enjoy as well. So that's the big overview of what the channel is. The other thing is we just put out a video on an event happening right now called AGDQ. It's Awesome Games Done Quick. It's a charity event that's happening all this week where some of the games from your childhood, some of the most award-winning games even from recent years are being speed run where people get together and they beat the game as fast as possible. It's really fun. So we just put out a video on that. We're also doing later this week a video on The Witcher 2. And bro, I'll go ahead and say it. You need to watch Arcane, and we need to do a video on it.
I know.
So,
everyone's been telling me how good that is. So
yeah, you need to avoid spoilers and just get in on it, because that's also an amazing show that we need to talk about on the Pixelists.
Yeah, and I think this announcement came out during the Critical Role hiatus, which was our hiatus as well, basically. The Critical Role TV show is coming a week early, so that's coming this month. It's coming in like less than 3 weeks, I think. So
yeah. So that'll be really fun. I'm excited for that.
Be doing that as well.
Yeah.
I cannot wait for.
Yeah. I think that's everything, though. So I think we're good to dive in, and I'll just go ahead and say, we'd like to do a quick recap. It's usually about 15 to 20 minutes long on what happened in the episode. It can be like a 4.5 hour long episode. So we do a brief recap. So if you're checking out this video right now, you might be seeing the recap that we've cut out and put as a separate video for people just trying to stay caught up. So if you're here for that, hey, and down in the pinned comments, you can find the whole video with our whole, discussion on our YouTube channel. So having said that, Will, do you want to take it away and talk about what happened in episode 9, I think, of Critical Role?
Yes, sir. And it was indeed episode 9. But alrighty, so we pick back up, and since it has been a few weeks since the previous episode, where we left off was kind of this confrontation where Fern, who had transformed into a rat, was spying on these wardens. And anyway, the wardens are leaving the room, and they actually stepped on her, which poofed her rat form, and so here she is, face to face with these people she was just spying on. So she just immediately launches into this lie, saying that like, this pack of direwolves just was attacking. I came in here to warn you guys and to get you guys to come help, and I had to transform into this rat because I had to get through the door. So she was like, that's why I'm here. Like, let's go. The direwolves are attacking, and the wardens aren't buying it, and just to refresh, there's basically like a head warden and then like 2 of his subordinates that are in this room.
Like
so
goons.
Immediately, the goons. So immediately they basically like kind of restrain her, and the guy in charge, the boss, which I'll probably just refer to him as for simplicity's sake moving forward, um, basically starts questioning her. He's like, "Oh yeah, what color dire wolves?" And like basically quickly realized that that's bullshit. And he's like, "Okay, really though, why are you looking for Gurge? Like, what do you? Why do you keep asking these questions about him? What's going on here?" And Fern lies again and says that she and Gurge are lovers and in a relationship, but he like took off on her, so she's just looking for him and looking for information on him. And while this is happening, she does telepathically communicate with Imogen because they still have that mental connection. And she kind of fills Imogen in on what's going on, and the party's like, okay, we got to get in there. Like she may be in trouble. So
Yeah,
base,
I think she's like, yeah, they're gonna kill me, like very
yeah.
casually. They're like, oh, okay.
Let's go. So the
Yeah.
party starts trying to like basically bust through the door while Fern is having this conversation. So we cut back inside to Fern and the boss, and she casts Charm Person on him and succeeds. So he immediately kind of like, chills out and tells the other guards, like, hey, stop restraining her, like, release her. And they've been hearing like these loud noises coming from behind them, which is the rest of the party now trying to break in to help Fern. So he's like, hey, y'all go investigate what that noise is. And he talks to Fern one on one, and she starts, just telling him about like Gurge and their relationship. And he tells her that, yeah, we captured him because this bounty hunter, Artana Vo, had paid them to like help assist her in capturing him. And that when they went to do that, he transformed into this like terrifying beast and, fought pretty hard, but they were able to subdue him, and he was taken back alive in order to account for his bounty. Um, and so right around this time is when the party actually successfully does like completely destroy the door and make it fall down, and the two goons are walking around like right as this happens. And Imogen's like, we knocked and it just fell. Like, you guys really need to look into fixing that." And they're like, what? And basically, Fern and the boss come out around a little bit later, like just a few moments later. And she's like, "Oh, did you guys subdue that big gang of direwolves that were here?" And the party's like, yeah, they fell off the cliff." And basically they're like, since he's still charmed by her, he's like, this is private property, you guys should probably go. And they're like, yeah, we will definitely go. So they get out of there really no worse for the wear. And they're trying to figure out what to do with this information, that they Artana Vo apparently has Gurge. And they're like, well, you know what, let's do what we always do, let's go talk to Esteros and maybe he can shed some light on this for us. um, so they head there and fill him in on everything, including not just this whole Gurge situation, but also the situation they had at the theater a few weeks ago with the Mimic and all that jazz. And they also introduce him to Chetney. Um, and regarding their run-in with the Mimic at the theater and, the Treshies and just all these little pieces of information they have, he's like, I can look into the Treshies, see what's going on. But he's like, be careful because they carry a lot of weight in this city. So, just watch your step if you're going to be asking about them. But he does say that there is this big like ball coming up that he gets invited to every year. That's basically with all like the well-to-do, affluent people in the city. That he usually turns down, but he's like, maybe this year I could go and kind of poke around, see what I can find out. And Laudna's like, oh, could we go? And he's like, I'll look into it. I'll see what I can do. Um, but then they get around to the Gurge Artanovo side of things, and he opens up this book that he has that he like keeps tabs on everybody in the city. And he's like, as far as a Gurge goes, he's kind of like this wild man that people in the city are very wary of, but like in the down below, the lower levels and on the outskirts of the city, they really look up to him. And they're like, okay. And he's like, as far as Artana Vo, she is a Unaya, which don't know if that pronunciation is correct, but basically what that means is she is half orc, half elf, and that she has a sister in town named Preo Medali, who is an owner of the Soot and Swill Tavern. So he's like, that's pretty much all I have, but she's a infamous bounty hunter, but you may be able to find out more from her sister. Um, and Estros also lets Orm know that he has been able to make some headway on his meeting setting up the meeting with the anger, and he's like, I could probably set that up in about a week's time. So Orm's like, awesome, thank you so much. And they basically take all this information and are like, okay, well, the day is still young. Let's go to this Soot and Swill Tavern, see if we can talk to Preo and see what we can find out. So they decide to do just that. And outside of Estros's, they quickly catch Chetney up on basically everything else that they had just talked to Estros about, like the mimic and the thing at the theater, and basically get him up to speed. And he's like, yeah, you guys are helping me out. I'm down to help you guys out as well. Kind of just more so cementing him as a member of the party beyond just this Gurge thing. And we also find out that he is over 200 years old, but has stopped counting after 101. And we get Fern reveals, which I think she's already revealed this, but she once again reveals that she's 112. And they also find out that, or don't find out, but we settle on the fact that Mr., her little familiar, is 7 because they didn't know how old he was. And so they kind of have it back and forth. And they're like, yeah, you're 7. So they basically, have those conversations as they're heading to the Soot and Swill. And once they get there, Ashton, apparently the last time he was here, kind of made some trouble. And so Preo, the owner, immediately sees Ashton when they come in and is like, oh, you're back again. And Ashton's like, okay, what do I got to do to smooth things over? And Preo's basically like, you got to buy this 85 gold bottle, and then we'll be chill. And Fern steps up and re-steals the earring that Ashton stole from her, and was like, how about we just trade this? And Preo's like, I'll knock it down to 40 if you include that. And Ashton hands her 50 gold and is like, here. And this is gonna, hopefully buy me some future goodwill. And Preo's like, great. And she also takes a little keen interest in F.C.G, which many people have in this campaign because, he is a very unique automaton. And, says hello to him and introduces herself as Preo. And that's when the party actually officially finds out that that is her. So they take the expansive bottle he just bought, go back to a table, try it, and they're like, okay, so what do we do now? And F.C.G is like, well, I'm going to take her some of this liquor, and he does, and she takes it immediately, and he just flat out asks her. He's like, hey, we're looking for Artanavo. We heard, she was your sister. Do you know anything, basically? And Preo denies it. She's like, my last name is Madali. Artana is Artanavo. Like, not the same name. We're not related. Whoever told you that was wrong. But F.C.G notices that she's kind of like glancing over her shoulder towards the kitchen and getting kind of fidgety when he asked that. And so he's like, okay, and goes back to the party, tells them this, and they're like, okay, well, we need to get inside that kitchen. So Chetney's like, I'll do it. And he just goes invisible and sneaks back there just to see what he can see. And inside, there's like this huge ogre that is the chef who's cooking up the meals for this place. And he's seemingly the only one back there. Chetney doesn't see anybody else, but he does see this like hidden door kind of blocked by like this dinner cart that he calls a bookcase because he's so small. But he can't really get to it because, the ogre is there. So he returns, tells everybody what he saw, and they're like, okay, well, we need to get this, we need a distraction. And they basically settle on Fern ordering some food and being like, oh, my compliments to the chef. Like, please bring the chef out here so that I can compliment him. And they decide to do that. And so while she's going to do that, F.C.G is also going to go distract Preo, so she's not any of the wiser. And he does that by putting the expensive bottle on his head and just starts like wheeling around back and forth, left and right. Meanwhile, balancing it like precariously. And Sam accomplishes this because he rolled a natural 20. He kind of just like fell ass backward into this distraction, but it worked beautifully. And so while those two distractions are happening, Chetney, Orem, Dorian, and Ashton sneak into the kitchen, and Chetney is still invisible. So they get in there, look around, end up moving that cart out of the way, and there's a lock on this kind of hidden door. And Chetney tries and fails. Ashton tries and fails. And meanwhile, the chef, who's the ogre, has, come out of the kitchen to talk to Fern, and he's like so stoked. He is like sprinting out of the kitchen. We found out his name is Pretty. and he is just literally moved to tears by the fact that somebody is complimenting his food, and he's beginning to share the recipe with Fern. So back inside the kitchen, Chetney tries one more time to crack this lock, which its DC has been raising every single time they've failed. But he manages to get it on this third try with a 26, and Matt revealed that the DC was a 25. So cracks the lock. They open the door and they find this small room lit by like a single lantern. And inside there's a cot, and there is another Unai woman sitting on it. And as soon as this door opens, she immediately draws her crossbow, and that's where the episode goes to break. Do you want to take it from there?
Yeah, sure. So, great job, by the way. Yeah, so we come back from break, and this is Artana Vo, and she is absolutely on the ready, and actually fires quite a few crossbow bolts at the party that have snuck into this small sort of like safe room, and actually strikes Orem with one of them. And the whole time the party's like, please, like, we just want to talk. Yeah. And then she just keeps firing these crossbow bolts. Well, finally, they speak to her in the language that she understands, which is gold. And so they all pretty much end up pooling gold onto the table. And Ashton has this moment of frustration with Chetney being like, oh, this is all the gold I have. And Ashton's like, is it really, though? Like, if I find out you're lying, I'm going to kill you.
Yeah.
Well, Orem actually says, hey, like, we're just trying to find out about Gurge. And if you'll help us with some information, I'll throw another 100 gold on the table. Which Artana Vo is like, okay, like, show me the money. So they throw up the gold, and even while she's still at the ready, she reveals that she did in fact capture Gurge, that he was this beast man, that it was much more challenging a mark than she realized. And in hindsight, she would have charged something like 8,000 gold for something like this, because they even ask, like, hey, what if we wanted to hire you to get Gurge? Yeah. And she's like, yeah, 8,000 gold. And they're like, all right, so not that. They also talk about, like, well, who hired you? And she mentions that it's the business commissioner who's in the Moon Tower by the name of Vali Dertrana. And this is the person who presumably, like, handles, like, business licenses and all sorts of things like this. And the Moon Tower is basically one of several towers at the top of the core spire where all the guilds and the larger businesses sort of do their work. And so Artana Vo reveals that that's where she had Gurge delivered. That's all she knows. And it seems like they're pretty much done until Dorian says, hey, you know a lot about bounties. Do you know anything about a sizable bounty, a 20,000 gold bounty? And as soon as he says this, he regrets it, because immediately Artana Vo is like, yeah, actually, and the trail was cold, but now that you mention it, it was for someone who looks really just like you.
Yeah.
And is looking at him very suspiciously. And Dorian is just, I mean, like, punch to the gut, is just realizing I've just given this person their first big lead. So he's like, oh, well, yeah, I don't know. I was just curious, basically. They basically say their goodbyes. They head out of the kitchen. And meanwhile, the party realizes they need to continue the distraction so that the group can get out of the kitchen. And F.C.G is still doing his, like, bottle balancing. And Matt mentions that, like, everyone's kind of like, all right, cool, man.
We're over it.
It's been 20 minutes. Like, we're good. And then meanwhile, Laudna, Imogen, and Fern, they're finishing up talking to Pretty. And Fern's like, you have such a pretty heart. And he's like, yes, it's very swollen. And they also, as he's getting up, he's going to see the group coming out of the kitchen. So Imogen goes, wait. Would you like to go on a date with us? And he's like, okay, yeah. And even Preo was like, nice, good job. So they agree to go on a date a few hours after he gets off his work shift, which is a couple hours after sunset. So the party leaves. They confer all this information, and they decide, okay, let's go to the core spire and let's check out this moon tower. So they go take the trolley back to the core spire. They go up towards the top of it, and they check out this very well-to-do sort of premium You can tell it's like a money type area of the core spire. There's guards, there's Simurg wardens, the patrolling ones who fly around, and they see these towers that are at the top of this spire. Well, so Imogen goes to the gate that's sort of keeping the entrance to the spire locked away, and talks to the two guards and says basically like, hey, I'm on business with Master Faramore back from my hometown. He sent me here to open a business, and I just need to get my license from the commissioner, Vali Dertrana. And the guards are kind of like, well, yeah, I mean, you're going to need more than that, pretty much. Like, we can't just let you in. So she does get some information from them in terms of which tower is the moon tower, but then basically goes back to the party and they're like, okay, we need a better idea. So the party talks about all sorts of options, like should we try to break in? Should we do some hijinks? And they're like, well, really, we were just kind of trying to get the lay of the land. I don't think, especially with this date coming up, we really want to, do something like this today. But they do realize, okay, what we could do, we could go back to Lord Esteros and ask him to write us a letter maybe to get into the moon tower. So they agree. They go back to Lord Esteros, who is baking, I think it was cookies or, some sweets, which I love this angle of him. And they're quite delicious, by the way. And they ask him all sorts of questions. They ask him about essentially, first of all, would he have the means to get Dorian's brother out of town? Which he's like, okay, what's happened in the last 2 hours to need this to happen?
Yeah.
But that's at the top of Dorian's mind because he's now worried about his brother's life. And he's like, yes, with the right strings, I could make that happen for you guys. So they talk about that. They also ask him for the letter to get into the moon tower, and he writes the letter. And it turns out that Master Faramore actually is a real person from Imogen's hometown, and it was an individual who owned several businesses in her hometown. And so he writes the letter for them. I feel like there was one more thing that they had asked them, but maybe not.
That they asked.
Well, I do remember actually now in this conversation, Imogen, they're like, oh, well, how are we going to go back to the moon tower? Because he writes the letter and he says basically, hey, this dated. You should probably go sooner than later. And we're like, ooh, we have our date with Pretty. We can't stand them up. And F.C.G. and pretty much everyone else is kind of like, I mean, is this going to be a serious relationship? Because if not, this kind of takes precedence. And there's a little bit of a back and forth that's kind of funny. But basically, Imogen reveals that she's never been on a date before and just says it's kind of hard to go on a date with someone when, you can hear their thoughts. And it's just very challenging. So she's never been on a date. All this to say, the party's like, okay, you know what? Let's just go ahead and head to the moon tower. They head that way. They give the guard the note. They're led into this courtyard area before the towers. They go into the moon tower, and there is this sort of front desk clerk who's locking away these books in this large bookshelf. And then it is sort of about to disappear down a hallway. Fern actually tries, in typical Fern form, wants to try to touch one of these books. And she gets immediately shocked, bolted, hair straight up, and gets blinded, actually, temporarily. They talk to this person. They say, hey, we're here on official business. And he says, okay, well, let me go see if Vali Dertrana is even here. Goes back, returns and says, yep, gone for the day. Sorry. And they're like, well, I mean, actually he says he didn't respond. And they're like, well, maybe he's dead. Maybe we should check. And he's like, I don't think he's dead. I'm we should probably check. And he's like, okay, I'll go look again. He goes, he looks again. And this time the party follows him down the hallway and he knocks on the door. No answer. And then he's like, whoa, what are you guys doing back here? Dorian slides Chetney behind him and casts invisibility on him so that Chetney can sneak over to the door and unlock it. The party has hijinks with this person. They walk back to the main room. F.C.G. grabs a book and gets shocked and immediately does this deception of I am now broken. And Apple computer shut down sound and all this stuff. Meanwhile, Chetney cannot get into this lock. It's pretty much impossible. He tries and tries, can't do it, even with really high rolls, by the way. Finally, Imogen just asks this clerk to take a note for them. And it says, hey, will you put it on his desk? Because we don't feel comfortable you just sliding under the door. And he's like, okay, fine, I'll put it on the desk. Goes back, unlocks the door. Chetney sneaks in, puts the note gets put on the desk, and then leaves. And Chetney's now in this office of Vali Dirtrana. There's a big bookshelf. There's a desk that apparently has a map of the trade routes in the Odiran wilds. He takes that map, which Matt then in outside the game hands him a amazing rolled up map, which I need to find a picture of that. We need to talk about that, by the way. And then he starts inspecting the bookshelf, realizes there's something behind it, finds a small compartment that inside of it has a journal and also has 100 platinum, which he pockets. That's 1,000 gold, people. And then in the journal, there's a couple of entries. It hasn't been too filled out. One of them, though, says requested by Nightmare King, bring alive. And the vibe of the session just totally like gets serious. Everyone's like, okay, Nightmare King sounds really like, holy crap, that sounds really bad. Like, oh boy. Well, Imogen then is like, hey, look for like a button or something in case it's like a trick bookcase. He finds a button. The bookcase slides aside. He steps into this dark stairwell and he hears two voices. One is Vali Dirtrana and the other one is a person who goes by the name of Ira. And Ira explains that he is nearly finished casting his web, designing his web across the city of his plan. Vali Dirtrana is pretty much like, I just need you to finish like whatever you're doing and get out of my hair. And Ira actually asks like, hey, if you'll bring me a Mahan child, it would, go quicker or be much better. And he's like, I'm not doing that, you freak.
Yeah.
But basically they finish their conversation. Vali returns back to the office, which Chetney panics. He can't figure out how to get out of the room. He then just goes up against the wall in a corner. And Vali immediately realizes that someone's in the room, takes a sword out of its sheath that's sort of like decorated on the wall and begins swiping and gets closer to Chetney in this corner. And then Chetney books it and jumps out of the office through the stained glass into the rainy, dark night outside. And that is basically where the episode ends. That's what happened in episode 9 of Campaign 3.
Whew. It was an
insane episode.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like trying to get all that all into like a 20-minute span. It's like, and then this happened, and then this happened. So much stuff happened in this session. So I'm ready to talk about it if you are.
Yeah. Let's just dive right in. Yeah. I think one of them mentioned it, that there were like 3 like full heist like missions in this episode. Or heist, not the right word, but like they had 3 different like, oh shit, stuff hitting the fan. And so, yeah, jam-packed.
Yeah, it was a crazy episode. It was a really good episode. It was a great episode to come back to after a long like holiday break,
Agreed.
And to me, it's just great seeing like the possibilities when like an episode happens in its entirety without any combat, and yet it feels like something was always happening. So,
yeah, that's just points to. Well, I was gonna say Matt, but really the cast as well, for just being so good at what they do, that keeping it super edge of your seat even without any real threat of death or anything. Well, I guess there were at times some threats of that, but yeah, love the episode as well.
Yeah, let's talk like maybe the biggest thing to discuss in this episode. I think we might have gotten our big bad in the form of Pretty, who's clearly been stood up on his date.
Yeah, I think you're right. And
it's going to come back to bite them. Party will be cursed in its entirety.
If they can just outlive his
enlarged,
issues,
swollen heart.
Then maybe
his grease-filled. Yeah.
But yeah, what a great NPC. And I wonder if that, like, how much of that was just improv on Matt's part, or if he, had any of that ready to go in terms of like characterization,
I bet it was a little bit of both, but knowing Matt, I wouldn't be surprised if it was primarily just improv, off the top. I loved his acting too, of pretty like tears welling in his eyes, and
Yeah.
some of like the group reactions are some of my favorite things. Like when the players are reacting to what Matt's doing,
Yeah.
both with Pretty's reaction to the food being so good, and I love, by the way, the server being like, you want to give compliments to the chef, like really,
Yeah.
and then just reading the journal of the Nightmare King, and then Volley Dertrana like swiping the sword.
Yeah.
It was intense. I
It,
was glued to the channel at that point.
it is, and that's like a great kind of like one of the things that's kind of hard to explain about Critical Role to somebody that doesn't watch it. That's one of like the great like fun things about the show is that like you get to see the real time player reactions as well as the character reactions. And so it's kind of like a whole nother level of like just an interesting part of the uniqueness of this entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, uh, I I don't know where to actually start here. I mean, we could. I guess
Let's maybe go like big story cues first,
okay.
because there's been like a lot that's happened just throughout these 9 episodes. It doesn't feel disjointed. It's been pretty awesome. But we had a name drop at the very end.
Right.
This Ira fellow seems pretty gnarly,
Mm-hmm.
and we had the mention of the Nightmare King.
Yeah.
So is this a callback, by the way, to any previous CR content, or is this totally fresh?
This is totally fresh.
Okay.
At least I think. Of course, correct me down below if anyone else remembers that, but I'm pretty sure this is
Campaign 1, episode 82.
Actually,
The
yeah,
Tavern Keeper was named the Nightmare King.
but yeah, I think it's brand new, so very exciting and so ominous as well. Like what a name. And I was did Ira's new as well, right? Or has there been any mention? Okay, because I wasn't that voice before we found out their name. I was like, "Ooh, is that familiar?" But
it was kind of Duggar-esque, I think. It might be what you were calling back on.
I think that is what it was.
But I think it's just pristine cultist vibe for me. It's just super shady, underdealing, and sometimes I love how Critical Role like indulges in the fantasy. Like just the drop of the Nightmare King name is so high fantasy. It's like it's so cool. And then on the same token, in that same breath almost, you have this Ira, I'm just gonna call him Ira, cultist person, asking for a Mahan child, and Volley being like, "No, you psycho!" Like, like I just love how like you get the high fantasy and you also get the like, "What is wrong with you?" Like, almost like the realism of how someone would actually react.
No, and get out of here! You're freaking me out now.
Yeah, I've had enough of you. So let's just start there, okay?
Okay.
We have a Nightmare King. We have this person Ira, who is seemingly and what was the comment? It was like our patron who was it someone in the quorum, or was it the patron who was in? I don't remember the language in that scene.
I don't remember exactly, but I just remember he was asking, he said the web has like I've built the web or something about the web of like all the pieces of this plan are like coming to fruition. And he asked for the Mahan child, but he also asked for bring me some riffraff no one will miss.
Right. That's right. Yeah, let me just read this line that's on Crit Roll Stats real quick.
Okay.
It says our patron is pushing for legislation in coming weeks. So this is obviously either a plant or someone that maybe they've either they've put into power or they're working for directly, who is presumably part of maybe the guilds, part of the Mahan houses, or part of the Chandra Quorum itself. Because I think we did get mentioned that some people in the quorum choose to reveal their identities. I think it was one person who's very open about being part of it. And then there's also this echelon of a set of 8 who were sort of like the elitists of the quorum, among others as well. But anyway, so it says, our patron is pushing for legislation in the coming weeks, so whatever you have planned must be quickened. And then you're right. Ira basically responds and says, you can't imagine all the great things I'm doing, but hey, bring me more riffraff. And by the way, if you can, throw in a Mahan child.
Yeah.
Which is like, no. And then like, just get this done and be out of my hair. So.
Wait, now I'm confusing myself. Does Ira or does Volley, is it Volley or Vale?
Volley.
Volley.
Sorry, I was going back and reading the quote now.
Does Ira or Volley say the thing about the patrons' legislatures coming?
Okay, so Volley says that, and then Ira basically like Volley says that and says like we need to hurry up, and then Ira says like you can't even like the cliche like you can't even imagine the beauty of like chaos that I'm doing or whatever, and then asks for more riffraff or a child, to which Volley's like, no, freak, like, but also get this done, which to me, knowing Volley's position, I'm assuming there must be some kind of blackmail that this character has on him, and Volley is just trying to be done with him, I'm guessing.
Yeah, so it's interesting that Volley is the one that, is speaking to his superior in terms of, we don't know the context, but something's got to be done before this like legislation happens. So, and it's not Ira that is necessarily in cahoots with this patron. I'm going to use the word patron, but so Volley is just enlisted Ira for whatever reason to help with something. So, or do you think they're all three in cahoots, or do you think just Volley has,
I think it's more like a triangle. I think it's a triangle where, and they say our patron, like this is a mutual person that they maybe not are both in connection with, but or at least realize is part of this plan. But Volley seems almost like insinuated to me, sort of disgusted with this whole ordeal and just wants to like, I just want you out of my life. I just want this done already.
Yeah.
And so that's why it's my understanding that Volley hasn't necessarily hired Ira, but that Ira has basically either with this patron and brought in Volley, or has brought in both the patron and Volley.
Yeah.
Is either manipulating Volley or, like I said earlier, has some kind of blackmail on him. Because Volley's clearly a person of influence, clearly a person of power. And, it feels like it's pretty standard in stories that people of power also have, fairly undersided interests, I guess.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I'm expecting that angle to go.
Okay. Yeah, and so sorry, I'm just parsing this out as we go. But then, his response of like, you don't even know the beauty of like what I've got working. Do you think that is in reference to this thing they are working together on, or do you think that was like a comment on like his own goals that may not be necessarily tied to this patron work that they're time crunch for?
I think it's both saying like be patient because I'm doing something that is taking a lot of attention and there's intentionality with it. But I think the also implication to us as viewers is when he mentions like this web is that, hey, like these random different story points that we've gotten so far, and you and I have said like surely some of this has to be connected in some way. To me, it implies that this character Ira may even be the person at the center who is, pulling strings and making things happen that, again, all these isolated events are somewhat linked. And just to recap, those events, top of my mind, Duggar and the broomstone that's being stolen, the furniture coming to life, the Treshy house, the attack on the Loomis twins, and the mimic. Yeah. Right. So and then Gurge. So I mean, there's a lot happening here. Oh, right. And then this thing going on with Ashton with the initials JM.
Oh, right.
Where he's like, this is business to be taken care of. Which, by the way, I love when they spoke to Estros about this, and Ashton's like, "Yeah, do you know anyone who would have the initials JM?" And Imogen's like, "Are you kidding me? Hey, Ashton, do you know anyone who has the initials JM?" But so there's a lot of different like story beats that are happening. I don't think this character Ira is responsible for all of them,
right?
But I wouldn't be surprised if this is like the next central foe that we're going to become acquainted with.
Yeah, and I agree that I think my instincts at least are that, and I don't know if it's because the voice was similar, like you pointed out, that helped me make the connection, but I feel like Ira is definitely the one who is Duggar. He's Duggar superior, or maybe the same type of creature that we saw Duggar had become. Um, and I think he might also be the one that did the mimic stuff because and we don't know why, but I don't know. I just get this vibe that, especially since he was asking for like riffraff no one would miss. To me, that's like, is he maybe trying to create more of whatever Duggar was, especially since Duggar's gone now? Like maybe he needs someone to fill in for whatever Duggar was doing. Um, but yeah, I don't know, and I don't know. I just get really weird. I feel like, and I don't know why I feel this way, but I feel like he has his own agenda that is separate from whatever they're using him for.
Yeah, and I have the sense that Volley might even be a doomed character because again, I'm totally shipping this whole like blackmail scenario, whatever,
Yeah.
which may not be the case at all, but just hey guys, just in general, working with like cultists and bad people, like it typically doesn't work out,
Yeah. Yeah, and I
towards
mean
your long longevity. So
yeah, and he clearly made it clear that like this wasn't something he was doing of his own, you know, aspirations. Like this is clearly, whether it be from his patron, whether it be from blackmail, like he's definitely is, you know, not wanting to be doing this, it seems like.
yeah.
Um so yeah, I agree that he's probably gonna get screwed, you know.
Yeah.
Loose
I'm
ends.
just I'm just so like I'm vibing on the Nightmare King.
Yeah, and do we think so? That, to me, that was in reference to Gurge. But I mean,
Yes.
I guess it could be in reference to anything, but bring him alive or whatever it said.
Mm-hmm.
Now, do we think that that's necessarily connected to Ira? Like, what's your instinct? Is that like, or do you think that's just a whole nother like set of things that?
It could go either way in my mind. I mean, you have this clearly evil character and you have a seemingly evil name
Yeah.
mentioned. So for me, it's easy to like draw the line, especially with Volley being the connector, like the common person. I mean, it could be this person's just in so deep that he has not just one, but multiple evil bad dudes that he is, working with. But to me, I mean, I think it would make sense if they were connected, but at the same time, it could go either way. I mean, it could be that Ira is sort of like the short term focus for the group in the more recent episodes, but that the Nightmare King becomes more of a looming. And I think this is just good writing in general, by the way, which I think Matt does well. Is wouldn't be surprised to see the Nightmare King become this large character story wise before the party actually even really meets this person or and even engages with them directly. So I don't know.
Yeah,
What do you think?
I agree with that, and I feel like the easy thread to make is that the Nightmare King is the patron that was referred to, but I don't think it necessarily has to be. So
Oh, is this like a Senator Palpatine type deal?
maybe. I mean,
Okay.
I am the Senate. I am the quorum. But
Yeah. Okay.
yeah, and this is all just completely grasping at straws, but I'm just wondering. So if the Nightmare King is the patron, then we know that the Gurge thing is connected to this specifically. And so I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, what do they want aware? I mean, not that we don't have 100% confirmation that Gurge is aware, whatever, wolf, I guess, since they claimed it was a direwolf attack. But like, what does he need that for? And what does he need a Mahan child for? I just want to know these things.
Yeah, I think for me that was just more of like an offhand, like, oh, and I'm super evil, by the way, type of line.
I
But I don't know. Maybe I think to be fair, I think our last one we did, I said that like the warden was like, Gurge. I mean, what's a Gurge? And you were like, no, I think he's saying like Gurge specifically. And that ended up being the case. So like maybe you're right. Maybe he specifically wants a Mahan child, which is interesting that he asked for that and not just any child, but that he asks, the Mahan houses are, the more elite, noble houses. So that is pretty interesting that it was that specific.
I know. Well, maybe my initial thoughts were that he could be using it if he is the person that made Duggar, if he could control, for lack of a better word, a Mahan child, that's a great chess piece to have. If you have like a royalty in a way.
Right.
Or like if he is the one, and I'm not trying to connect all these dots because I don't think they're all connected. I think, there's different storylines here. But if it is connected to the Loomis twins, I mean, we know they were a Mahan house, right? So maybe he's looking for another in as far as like assassinating someone. Like maybe he could use a Mahan child to like get past security or something. I don't know. These are all like stretches, but that stood out to me.
It definitely feels like some of these storylines are converging. Because I don't remember, I think it was on me and I just forgot to mention it, but Estros did tell Orem that the anger is available to meet with them. And Orem said,
we covered that.
We did? Okay, cool. And Orem said basically, hey, at the quickest convenience. So we know we're getting, that might even happen this next episode, actually. And so, we're going to get more details on that attack. And it kind of makes me wonder, I mean, next episode's episode 10. Right. How long do you think they're going to be spending their time in Drusar? We know Marquette, Matt's built out, it seemingly has built out a pretty vast continent. Again, 10 episodes in, how much longer do you think we're going to be here? Which I don't have a problem if we're here much longer. I'm trying to get a sense of, okay, we have some converging storylines. We're getting a lot more meat of like certain events that are happening. It makes me wonder if we're heading towards a climax in Drusar.
Yeah, I mean, there definitely seems to be a lot happening in Drusar that we could spend the next 30 episodes here, and I feel like it would make sense. But it could also be as soon as next episode if they got to get out of the city because of what Chetney just did, or maybe they got to get out of the city because they're getting Dorian's brother out, and then maybe we're just out and we don't come back to Drusar for 50 episodes. I feel like it could really go. This is a terrible answer to your question, but I feel like it could really go either way. Like, I think it really just depends on the heat that they have on them. Because if it's not just like heat on them, there's no reason to really get out. And I think there's enough compelling things that are reasons to stay. So I mean, we'll see, I guess. But yeah, I could really see it going either way as far as staying or leaving. I think we will explore much more than Drusar in this campaign as a whole, but it might just be a minute before we actually step foot outside the city.
What about the map? Like there's a map of trade routes through the Odiran Wilds, which this isn't the entirety of Marquette. Help me with the geography here. The Odiran Wilds, where in Marquette is this?
Yeah, so
I'm gonna also Google just to do the old Google.
Yeah. I looked earlier when you were talking about that during the recap. I pulled up Matt's Twitter, Travis's Twitter, a few of them, just to see if anybody had like shared a picture of it yet, and I don't think they have. I'll keep an eye on that. But if anyone that's watching this has found an image of that map, please share it because I would love to see it. But that being said, yeah, he did describe that it was these trade routes and stuff, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was a larger map than just that. And that was just kind of the excuse.
Yeah, okay.
To kind of, that's why, Volley had it on his desk, is because he specifically was looking at these trade routes, but this was Matt, all right, here's your first map of this area,
Yeah. So then the question is obviously important enough to have a map created for this. What's your insight on the importance of why does Volley care about the trade routes in Marquette?
Yeah, now that's a good question, and I think there is a purpose to that. Like, yeah, I think this, was a fun chance to get them a map in game, but there really was no guarantee that Travis was going to say, I take that. He could have easily just ignored it. So I do think that that was a story clue. There is some thread being painted there, and maybe it's related to whatever he's doing for the Nightmare King, or maybe it's just part of his duties for whatever. Does he have a title? Like, I mean, he obviously is.
Business commissioner, I think,
Yeah,
is the
like,
simplest.
so maybe it
Whatever.
has something to do with that. I mean, he clearly is the one in charge of like new business coming to Drusar, so maybe he's also in charge of like routing these different imports, exports, and stuff. Like, we don't really know what falls under his job description, as it were. So again, this is a kind of a bad answer in terms of giving a concrete direction here, but I think it could
Yeah.
very easily be something connected to this overarching plot with the Nightmare King, or it could just be his normal duties for his job.
I do like how he decided to take it, and the group was kind of like, "Oh, that's cool." And then Matt, like, just
Yeah.
with just a subtle smile, pulls out the map, and everyone's like, "Oh!" My theory that I'm going to go with, I think it's related to Broomstone.
Mm.
I think, Duggar is like the front man to get the Broomstone immediately moved once it comes in to Marquette, and then something that is as rare a substance and as clearly lucrative a substance obviously can't be freely continually moved throughout Marquette. And so part of me wonders if Volley, as like the business person, is, a middleman who is finding creative ways to get that Broomstone out of Marquette. Um, Presuming people want to. I mean, I still like the theory you threw out earlier of someone using Broomstone to maybe even lift the core spire or do something with Drusar, which is just a very cool theory. But yeah, that's kind of what I'm going with right now. So we'll see how that shapes up.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could be onto something because clearly Broomstone's at the heart of a lot of this stuff,
Mhm.
and we
I
know
kind of,
it's
yeah.
yeah,
I kind of feel like the whole Pepe Sylvia meme is like, and then this, and then there's this, and this connects here, and it's like it makes so much sense. And then
yeah.
like 10 episodes later, we're gonna look back and be like, yikes, that was not at
Whoops.
all. Nowhere in your rambling did you come anywhere remotely close to a coherent answer.
You will be awarded no points,
Yeah,
and may God
and
have
may
mercy
God
on
have
your soul.
mercy on your soul.
But no, I mean that's the
Oh
beauty of
man.
this, right? We gotta go Pepe Silva. That's the fun of it. Um, but I do think you could be onto something because the Broomstone is clearly at the heart of a lot of this, and it's and sometimes the easiest answer is the simplest, and maybe this is just about money, and if that's a powerful, expensive resource that we know only one organization in all of Exandria controls, which I don't
Yeah.
remember it off the top of my head. Um, Maybe this is some sort of play to like become
Oh.
a new, distributor or a new source for that. And with that much money involved, there's going to be a lot of like shady shit going on because, they're not,
Mhm.
people aren't just going to let their revenue
Yeah.
just get stolen like that.
Yeah, and I just googled it because it was mentioned again in this last episode, and I thought Esteros or someone mentioned that the organization that controls it is based out of Ank'Harel, which I don't know if we knew that before, but when it was mentioned, I was like, "Ooh, that's an important story point because that's the capital of Marquette." And I just googled it. It's the Alsfaran Union,
There
and
we
it's
go.
based in the city of Ank'Harel.
Mm,
So maybe the trade routes. Maybe we're thinking about this backwards. Maybe he's aware of the trade routes where Broomstone can be snuck in. And
mm.
so Lord Esteros's warehouse is just one of many that they are sneaking Broomstone in to get it into Marquette.
Yeah, I like that. I like
So
that. Oh, because it was the trade routes like around, right? It wasn't
yeah,
just like the greater trade routes for necessarily
right.
all of Marquette. Yeah, I like that. And maybe like, and this is again, I'm reaching into Mephistoing territory here, but like if Ank'Harel, which we know is the capital, um, is the hub for the Allsfaran Union or whatever, maybe Drusar like and if this reaches all the way to the top to the quorum and stuff, maybe this is like a reach to like make Drusar better than on Corel. Like, we're gonna take your chief export. Like, if
Yeah.
this is kind, I don't know, it's kind of weird, but like, if the people that are in control of the city are the ones really behind all of this, maybe it's because they're trying to make the city the best for, I'm
Well, I
sure
mean,
selfish purposes, but
don't we know that there was some like war back in the day in Marquette between like two large forces, and it
yeah,
basically was like a standstill? Like
the
who
are you
was
talking
that
about
between?
the Hellcatch Valley thing?
I don't know. I need to find. I have my
That's
notebook actually right
that's
here.
the conflict that I'm immediately remembering, which was the one that mercenary group rose to power in. The one that the Paragons Call, I think was their name.
Yeah, I'm not thinking of that.
Okay.
Okay, the Stratos throne and the court of the Lament Path, the Apex War,
Oh,
and it
okay.
was years ago. He mentioned it in the introduction of episode 1,
Mm.
but I don't remember where these factions currently reside. Um, it'd just be interesting if it was like one was capital esque and then one was Drusar related, and there was
Yeah,
some like greater power play politics happening.
that would be super interesting. And yeah, I don't know enough about the Apex War off the top of my head either to cement that if that is what's happening. I'll have to check it. I'll have to look into that. But yeah, that would be really interesting. Or,
Yeah, the
it could have nothing to do with these, Drusar, is not even trying to take over, and I'm just reaching at straws here. But
yeah. Okay.
ugh,
Okay, whatever. Man, that
we'll
was
find out.
so much to discuss just from like the last 20 minutes of the episode.
Yeah,
Definitely let us know below your thoughts and your favorite theories. Because I think something that Will, you and I have talked about is maybe like around episode 10 or so, maybe putting out a video. I don't know if we should do like just a summary, like first 10 episodes, here's what happened. Or maybe that should be later. I don't know, but definitely putting out some kind of video that's on like you and I, like our favorite theories that people have shared with us. Because there have been some really awesome theories that have come down in the comments section. So if we do something like that, like I said, put your favorite theories down below because we do read them and it's pretty insightful stuff. And just like we did a couple of episodes ago, we even like to share when some of those theories end up being true.
yeah,
One of our commenters like nailed 2 specific story points, and that's just fun. I mean, it's just fun to see stuff like that.
yeah,
So,
100%.
but what else in this episode? I mean, that was kind of like the major thing. What else you want to talk about?
Yeah, that was like the juiciness, but there were a few things. Let me just take a quick glance at my notes. Um, I know one thing was we found out a little bit about Laudna. I think when she was talking about when the girls were talking about like, what's your dream date, and have you ever been on a date? And Laudna said that I was even before I died, I was like the weird outcast, which was interesting information to find out. And she mentioned that like some boy when they were younger, I don't remember the story, but like picked on her or something. And the rest of the cast is like, well, what was their name? And they were fishing for if she was gonna say Percy, but she was like Andy, and they were like, oh, we were wondering if you say Percy, and she goes, she did not fucking know Percy. And so I just think that was an interesting like reveal there because a lot of people have been wondering like what was Laudna's place in Whitestone. But so anyway, we at least now have confirmation that she wasn't like a secret Dorolo or something
Oh,
along
okay.
those
Yeah.
lines.
I
I mean,
get it.
unless she's lying, but with as much speculation that has been around like her history in Whitestone, I thought that was at least a significant reveal in that it eliminated a lot of things.
That went
Um,
totally over my head because I was like, "Who's Andy? Who was Andy in
yeah, yeah.
CR1?" And like,
So yeah, Andy was nobody, but it
is this
was
person
more
going to
so
be in
that
the animated series?
I hope he is now.
uh, yeah, he's the
Um,
hero.
but yeah, so that was one thing I wanted to at least touch on. Um, what else do we got here? I mean, there is this was we kind of a little talked about it, but basically confirmation that Gurge is a were person.
Yeah, it has I guess an infection of some kind. I guess lycanthropy is. I don't know enough in like D&D lore, but I guess you get bit and you have it. Because I think Artana Vo actually says like it makes you don't get bit from that one.
Yeah, she did say that. Which I completely forgot about that. So yeah, that that's interesting. And so I know there's still, a lot of people out there that think Travis that Chetney may not be his real character. And I think we've mentioned this before, but Travis loves werewolves. So I think there's still some Travis truthers out there that think, maybe Gurge is his character. It is funny how much they've been I personally think Chetney is Travis's character, but I think if for whatever reason his character is Gurge, it's hilarious how like they keep making fun of that name. Like they keep being like Gurge, what a dumb name. And like I keep seeing Travis like laughing. And I'm like, oh man, if that is his character, that's gonna be
Single tier.
hilarious. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I could definitely see it as like the long game, but I'm like 80% Chetney's his real character.
Yeah.
Especially when he slid the bookcase aside and was like, "Do I go down the stairs or not?" And he was like, I just got to do it. I just got to know." And he, to the out of character, he said, "Man, I really don't want to have to come back again as like a third character." Now it could be because Gurge isn't ready, but my interpretation is like, I don't want to die again and have to create a character like this.
Right.
This is me. So
yeah, I agree.
yeah.
But I do wonder about Gurge and like what if maybe that's just part of his characterization. He's a werewolf and that's it. And these little flavor moments are just because that's his character. Or if there is some like greater connection here. Because like why like it's weird that a werewolf is the one that hooks master craftsmen up with new jobs, Like
Oh yeah, and
like what the hell is that connection?
yeah, and I think that's why the group was like, Chetney, like seriously, like what is going on with this person? Like surely there's more to it. And he was like, really, this is it. Like this, I promise this is it. And I guess like the comment on, the people of like the Smolder Spire or like down below, I guess not the Smolder Spire, like of the jungles or of the wilds, sort of respect Gurge because maybe Gurge is a sort of man of the people and like the downtrodden. And so Chetney, an old timer, loses his job. Yeah, Gurge will help you out. I mean, maybe that is it. I don't know. But it does seem a bit because of like the interest that seems to be following Gurge. I mean, Lord Estros knows about him. The Nightmare King wants him. It is a bit of it's a strange, come live with me for a little bit while, it'd be like if, I don't know, the level 1 Marvel hero gets invited to live with Tony Stark for, I don't know. It's a bit strange, I guess.
Yeah. So I feel like there's more to unpack there. Especially, which signs seem to point to this, but especially if Gurge is who was being referred to in that Nightmare King note. But maybe maybe it's because werewolves are rare and maybe like their blood is useful for something, and so maybe that's why he's needed or something like that. But I don't know. Still a lot of questions there. But
do we still think Lord Estros is something?
I think so. I mean, I don't think it's necessarily as like exciting or as big of a reveal as like vampire or werewolf or that type of thing. But I think there's clearly something that's still unknown about him, especially since there are so many rumors that Matt like specifically alluded to, Like
right.
I feel like there's, and maybe it's going to be really underwhelming, whatever it is, but I do think there is something.
Yeah. And it does make me wonder if story-wise we're heading to my theory, maybe the end of Esteros. He's obviously highly pursued by people who want to, rid Dressar of his influence. He has hidden traps even in like his spare bedrooms. He's basically a recluse, and now he's talking about going to this ball for the first time in years. To me, I mean, I'd be fine with him being in the story to the end, but he's a bit of a crutch, a convenient crutch to the party of let's just go AC Estros. Let's get Estros to help us. It's great, I think, early on, low level, but I do wonder if we're coming to a point where it's basically, hey, you guys are gonna have to fend for yourself because Estros isn't. I don't know. That's kind of just what I'm thinking.
No, I really like that. I was gonna tack on, but you said it. I think that he is a huge crutch. Like whenever they don't know what to do, it's like let's go to Estros, and they literally did that twice this episode. They went and saw him left, and were like, let's go back. Let's see what he knows about this. So I feel like narratively, it would make a lot of sense for them to lose that crutch if that maybe he dies or maybe for some other reason. But yeah, that would be super interesting, especially if if he does go to the ball. Which one? If he goes to the ball, I hope they get to go, just because I feel like that would make a great episode, all of them at the ball. But it would be fascinating or fascinating is not the right word, but it would be interesting if that's what got him killed, and they kind of had to deal with that on their conscience, that like this recluse who finally came out for us is dead, and he was the one we leaned on. Like, what do we do now? And maybe that's what gets them out of Drusar finally, because maybe the heat's going to be on them as well if they're known associates of his or something.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, yeah, I really like that. I think that could definitely be the case, that he may exit the story for one reason or another.
Yeah. That's all I got to say about that. I mean, that's just what I'm thinking. So
yeah, I like that. As far as anything else, most of the little stuff I wanted to touch on, we touched on in the recap, and I don't really have more to say on it than just bringing it up. So I just kind of won't bog us down with that stuff. But one interesting thing was we found out Imogen's horse's name was Flora. So, and this isn't like a big thing or anything, but we got a little bit more of a glimpse into her, she kind of, her happy place was in a field with her horse. So I just thought that was cool insight. And she, of course, this is campaign 2 stuff, but she made a funny comment about like, I know as much about horses as this character from this other campaign knew about sailing. So she was just kind of poking Travis there, which I thought was funny. But yeah, that's really all I got, I think. What about you?
No, I think we pretty much hit on all of it. Yeah, I am thinking maybe next sesh we're heading towards an encounter with the anger and some more explanation there. Or maybe the outcome of this break-in is gonna be like high octane type of episode, like in High Pursuit. I mean, I don't know. So
yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Is like this may be the whole left turn and everything that we thought was gonna happen, because I mean, he didn't see him yet, but if they like see Chetney, and I'm assuming the rest of the party's gonna come try to help the direction of that scream, like they may be identified as people who broke into Vali's office, and then stuff may just be all off course if that's the case, and maybe we leave Drusar.
One last detail that I forgot to mention is we did finally get the name of the 5th spire, which I've said a couple times, like, hey, I wonder what this 5th spire is, and it's called the Lucent Spire, and it is where most of like the noble houses basically live.
Oh yeah, that's right. I'm glad you said that, because I forgot about that completely.
Yeah, so we have the Core Spire, the Aerie Spire, where the Starlight Conservatory is. Mm-hmm. The Smolder Spire, which is like sort of like the ash covered
industrial.
Yeah. I'm forgetting.
I forgot which ones you already said.
Let's start over. Core Spire, Lucid Spire, Smolder Spire.
Smolder? No, you just said that one.
I just said that. Now we can't remember.
Wait, the one that they are always going to.
The Lantern Spire?
Lantern, yeah.
Okay. I can't remember if it was Lantern District or Lantern Spire.
No, Lantern Spire.
And then what was the last one now?
Aerie. Did we say that one?
I said that already. Did I say that? All right, forget it. We're not doing this. We're gonna have to cut this part
5 hours
out.
later.
Yeah. Someone in the comments is going to be like, "Hey guys, it's not too complicated."
You guys are
just
morons.
Clearly, we're not morons. We're doctors. So, all right. Well, I think that's all we got, right?
Yeah, I think so. We are. Yeah, I mean, I'm excited to keep theory crafting, especially on the stuff we spent the majority of this episode talking about. The Nightmare King. I want to say Ian. That's not his name. What's his name? Ira. Thank you. Ian. But so yeah, I would love to talk to you guys in the comments or on Twitter about all of that because we could keep going for forever. Can't wait till next week. Hopefully we get some more insight there. But yeah.
And we're at the Pixelists, by the way, on Twitter.
Yeah, at the Pixelists on Twitter. So hit us up there for show. Yeah,
check out the podcast too. By the way, if you like to listen through this on audio, it is going to be an Apple Podcast very soon, and it's already on Spotify, so you can check that out.
Yeah, and not to be the cliche YouTubers or podcasters that say this, but it does go a long way if you throw us that like or that subscribe. It means a lot. We're getting close to 500 subs. So
yeah, do we need to do something for that, or
maybe we should? So I'm excited. I do know that at 1,000, which we're a ways away from, but that's when you can like change your URL. So like we could be youtube.com/thepixelists instead of like !TUWX, you know. Do us a favor, help us get there. And that's pretty much all I got. We just got to do a thumbnail.
Chances are, if you're an hour and a half into this video, I'm gonna guess you're already subscribed.
Yeah, but some people just don't ever subscribe to anyone, So.
Yeah. Thumbnail. I don't know. Ideas?
My first instinct was like Pretty the Ogre, of like just being like really like brought to tears. But I don't really know how that, like, if we could just both do that or if there's some other.
You could be the ogre, and I could be like the compliments to the chef, like
okay,
or something.
That works for me.
Okay, yeah.
All right,
are you ready?
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out what I should do, but yeah.
Okay. Right. That's better. Yeah. Okay. All right. Cool.
We got something in there.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys for listening, and we'll catch you later.
See you next time.
See ya.
Bye.